Welcome back again to Apache Kafka series. In the previous video, we have seen how to create an image from the our Google instance or the virtual machine instance, and then how to use that image to create other instances. In this video, we are going to continue with configuring Zookeeper Ensemble and Kafka cluster on the instances we created, because one of the important things that we need is to have our IP addresses ready. And now that we have created the instances and the internal IP addresses, those are the IP addresses that we are going to use. So let's get started and configure our Zookeeper Ensemble and Kafka cluster. Okay, as you can see now on my screen, these are the instances we created previously. And with these instances, we have also been assigned, or Google has given us our internal IP addresses. These are the internal IP addresses. And then in the instances that are running, we also have public IP addresses. But for configuring Zookeeper Ensemble and Kafka cluster, the internal IP addresses are what we need. So let's start with our third instance, because that is the one running from where we left. So we'll go to the console of this instance. Let's click on the SSH. When the console opens, then we will continue from where we stop. So now that our SSH is open, or the console is opened, let's go ahead and create my ID file in the data directory of the Zookeeper. I have stopped the Zookeeper and Kafka already. So now in this, we are going to create, let's set sudo echo, because for each instance it will have a specific ID. This ID is like the Zookeeper, the instance, or the Zookeeper instance identifier. So this Zookeeper will have a specific ID, and this ID you can create it by creating a file called my ID in the data directory of Zookeeper. This ID will be an integer value, so you can give any integer value, just that for an ensemble, each node should have a specific ID. So for example, this is the console of the third node. I will just give this one 3, and then I will create the file in the var, that is where our data directory is, live, and then Zookeeper, then my ID. Let's say I create this, I get permission issue, so let me just sudo su, and then run the same command, var, let me continue with the super user, echo 3, then var live, and then Zookeeper, then my ID, that is the name of the file. So now I will have my ID with this value, assuming I now just cat to see if it is created, lib Zookeeper my ID, and you can see I have this with the value of 3. Then the next step is to like now configure the IP addresses. So for example, let's go to our zoo file. Also I will use vim editor zoo, which would be from the Zookeeper we install in our local user local. We have Zookeeper config, then we have the zoo that we created, zoo.cfg. In this file, at the end, we are going to add the others instance internal IP addresses. These IP addresses 10.182.0.7 to 0.9, we are going to add them as instances to the Zookeeper. So for example, let's start with the configuration. We say server.1, our first server, and it is server.1 equal to 10.182.0.7. This is our first server, and this server will have a communication port of 2781, and then it will also have an election port. So 2781 for the communication port, and then 3781 for the election port. We have discussed this already previously, so I'm not going into detail about them. If you missed that, maybe you can check from the previous video. Then we have server.2, and in this also is 10.180. sorry, the previous one is 182, not 3. The 182, then 182.0 dot, this one is 8, and then the same port 2781, 3781 for both communication port and election port. Then the third node will be server 3, which is this server that we are on now. Then it's 10.182.0.9, and then we will have a communication port of 2781, and then the election port 3783. Sorry, 37, I am missing this, 3781881. Also for this one, 3781. Likewise, as we have talked previously, we are not changing the client port because each one is on its own separate server. So here we are now done with the first instance configuration of the Zookeeper. What we are going to do now, we are going to save this file. After saving the file, then go and configure the second instance. Before going there, let's also try to change a little thing in our Kafka, so that let's check our Kafka configuration also to make sure everything is okay with the Kafka also. So let's say, for example, VM, our user local Kafka, then config, and then we have our server properties, and you can see this one is also having broker ID of 1, which should be broker ID of 3. So now we are going to change this to 3 because this is our third node. And after that, let's check, and also though this is not always necessary, as it is stated in the comment, if you did not uncomment this, then by default it will use the same thing. So but let's uncomment it, the listeners, and then we are not also changing the port here because we are not on the same machine. Previously, if you could remember, we changed this port, the listener port, to 90, 92, 93, 94, but in this case we are not going to change anything. So let's quickly look also into we have created this directory already. So let's see the Zookeeper connection. We are telling this machine to connect to a local host Zookeeper. So we already have Zookeeper on this host. So I think everything is okay for the third instance. Now what we are going to do is to save this. Okay, also one thing that we should check here is that because when you start your Zookeeper or machine, if you both have Zookeeper and Kafka installed, by default it starts with the data of this IP, with this broker ID. You see, we give a broker ID of 1 at the beginning when we check. So now in our temp directory, this ID or the data created in the temp directory will be reflecting the ID of will be reflecting the previous ID. So it's better, this configuration should be done before starting all your instances, and you are sure that okay, you don't need to delete the data. For example, now that we run it for testing purpose, we can go to this temp directory and delete the data there. So let's save this file. After saving the file, then let's go to our temp directory, and then Kafka logs, and you can see that we have Kafka logs here. So I'm going to remove everything. We don't need to do anything, otherwise Kafka will give us an error saying that the data directory ID, because of that ID that we change. So now let's just delete everything. We don't need anything, so now nothing. Okay, we are done with the first instance or first node, both the Zookeeper instance and the Kafka part. So let's start another instance from these instances. This one now that is running, we will restart it later, but for now let's start the second instance also and make our configuration. So go to the menu on start or resume. Yes, start. Okay, it's starting now. So now that our second instance is already started, we can then go to the console of that instance, and then we open the console. Okay, now that the console for the second instance is also opened, let's now check if any of the instances are running. For example, we can check by sudo then net start by using the net start command, and then grep the listening port. Okay, and I think we only have Zookeeper now running on port 2181, but no Kafka, and that could be due to permission issue. So one of the things then we are going to do, let's check our script, startup script that we created. So sudo vim, I think we create that in user local sbin Kafka startup scripts, and here we have a command. I think that okay, this command is executed. Let's give sudo to this command so that it's executed as the sudo user, and then let's save it. We'll restart it later, but for now Kafka is not running already, so let's stop Zookeeper also, and then we'll stop Zookeeper by running this command sudo Zookeeper var user local Zookeeper. Then from this we go to the bin of the Zookeeper zk server sh, and then stop. Okay, now we are stopping. Okay, Zookeeper is stopped already, so now it's also stopped. So let's go into our configuration. The first thing we are going to do, also let me change just to sudo so that I can continue on this. For now we are going to stop here, and you can also subscribe and maybe enable the alerts on the YouTube. So thank you very much. We will continue with the next video.